everyone. Welcome to this week's Crackling Tales. I have a couple of notes that I wanted to check in with you on to make sure. As you may have noticed, we have a different fire and a different chair. That's because it's really getting late in the spring and it's really almost too warm to have a real fire in the fireplace. So we have this virtual fire, which is working out just as well. We're beginning to see the light here in Michigan. We get a chance to go outside maybe in a couple of weeks and start spending some more time together. But until then, we have to stay home and stay safe. This week's story is a short story, and I mean it's extra short. It's not going to take us very long to get through it, but that's okay because we might need a little bit of that extra time next week. I'll get into that later. But even though it's a very short story this week, it has one of my very favorite endings, and I think you're going to like it too. The book I'm taking it from is called Tricks and Treats, edited by Joe Gores and Bill Pronzini, published for the Crime Club by Doubleday and Company of Garden City, New York in 1976. And the story we're going to read is by a man named Len Gray, and it is called The Little Old Lady of Cricket Creek. The Little Old Lady of Cricket Creek. Art Bowen and I were trying to analyze evaluations when Penny Thorpe, the secretary, walked into the office. "Yeah, Penny, what's up?" "Mr. Cummings, there's a woman out in the lobby. She's applying for the file clerk's job." Penny walked over and laid the application form on the desk. Good. I hope she's not one of those high school dropouts we've been getting." I stopped, staring at the form. "Age 65, I roared. "What are we running around here? A playground for Whistler's mother?" Art put his Roman nose into it. "Now, Ralph, let's take it easy. Maybe the old gal's a good worker. We can't kick them out of the building just because they've been around for a few years. How's the app?" Good old Art, the peacemaker, with about as much sense as a lost Cub Scout. "Well," I said doubtfully, "it says her name is Mabel Jumpstone." "That's right, Jumpstone. Good experience, seems qualified, if she checks out. You game for an interview?" "Sure, why not? Let's do one together," which is against the company policy of Great River Oak Insurance Company. All personnel interviewers are to conduct separate interviews and make individual decisions. At least that's what we're supposed to do. Usually we double up and save time. Penny remained standing in front of my desk, tapping her pencil on the glass top. "Well?" she asked haughtily, which sums up her disposition perfectly. "Okay, Penny, send Mrs. Jumpstone in." She came shuffling into the office, smiling and nodding her head like an old gray mare. Her black outfit looked like pre-World War I. She had on a purple hat with pink plastic flowers around the brim. She reminded me of Ida Crabtree, my housekeeper, whose one passion in life is running over stray cats in her yellow Packard. She sat down in the wooden chair and said, "Hello there." Her voice was almost a bellow. I looked at Art, who was leaning forward in his chair, his mouth open, his eyes round. Mrs. Jumpstone," I began. "Mabel, please." "Mabel, this is Mr. Bowen, my associate." I waved a hand at Art, who mumbled something inappropriate. "This is a very interesting application, Mabel. It says here you were born in Cricket Creek, California." "That's right, young man. Home of John and Mary Jackson." She smiled at me, proud of the information. Art bent over, scratching his wrist. "John and Mary Jackson?" "Oh, yes," she replied. "The gladiola growers." He tried to smile. I'll give him credit. Oh, yes, of course. It must have slipped my mind. Let me see that application, Ralph." He grabbed it from the desk and took a few minutes to study it thoroughly. Mabel and I sat and watched each other. Every once in a while, she would wink. I tried looking at the ceiling. Art glanced up and snapped, "You worked at Upstate California Insurance for 10 years. Why did you quit?" Sharp thinking, Art. He made a career out of trying to catch people off guard. I'd never seen him do it once, yes. Mabel shrugged her tiny shoulders. "Young man, have you ever lived up north? It's another world, cold and foggy. I just had to leave. I told Harry, that's my husband who passed away recently, God rest his soul, that we had to come down here. Mr. Bowen, you wouldn't believe how much I enjoy the sun. Of course, you've never been to Cricket Creek," she added, which was true, of course. I doubted very much if Art had even ever heard of Cricket Creek. Art looked as if he wanted to hide. Mabel smiled brightly at him, nodding her head pleasantly. Mabel, I said, the job we have open entails keeping our personnel files up to date. Quite a bit of work, you know, in an office this size. Really? Really. Even requires a bit of typing. You can type. Oh, heavens, yes. Would you like me to take a test? Yes, that might be a good... Let's go find a typewriter. Coming, Art? He grinned. I wouldn't miss it for the world. We walked out of the office. Art whispered in my ear, maybe 10 words a minute, be my guess. Turned out to be more like 90. I handed Mabel one of our surveys on employee retention and told her to have a go at it. She handled the typewriter like a machine gun. The carriage kept clicking back and forth so fast that Art almost got himself a sore neck watching the keys fly. Our applicant handed me 3 pages. I couldn't find a single error. Art looked over each page as if he were examining the paper for fingerprints. He finally gave up, shaking his head. Mabel went back to my office. Art and I walked over to a corner, Art holding the typed sheets. Well, what do you think? He asked. She's the best typist in the building, without a doubt. She's different, but you're right. Check her references. And if they check out, he shrugged, let's hire ourselves a little old lady from Cricket Creek. Art poked his head in my door the next day. What about our typewriter whiz? I just called her. Application checked out perfectly. I bet she raises a few eyebrows, which wasn't a bad prediction at all. Within 2 months, Mabel Jumpstone was the most popular employee in the building. Anytime someone had a birthday, she brought in a cake and served it in the afternoon break. She never failed to make announcements over the company PA system when she learned about new benefits. People with problems started coming to Mabel. She arrived early each morning and stayed late. She never missed a day of work, not one. 6 months after we hired her, Art walked into my office. His eyes were glassy and his mouth was slack. He plunked down heavily in a chair. What's the matter with you? I asked. The cash mail, he groaned. We receive quite a lot of cash from our customers. Once a week, on Friday, we take it to the bank. Today was Friday. What about the cash mail, Art? Come on, what's the matter? He looked at me, his eyes blinking. Harvey was taking it to the bank. He called 10 minutes ago. He was robbed, conked, knocked out. Guess who did it? Who? Mabel. Mabel Jumpstone. Our little old lady. You're kidding. You've got to be kidding, Art. He shook his head. Harvey said she wanted a lift to the bank. After they got going, she took a pistol out of her handbag and told him to pull over. Harvey said it looked just like a cannon, the gun. He just woke up. The money and Harvey's car are gone. So is Mabel. I stared at him. I can't believe it. It's true. Every word. What are we going to do? I snapped my fingers. The application. Come on. We ran to the file cabinets and opened the one labeled Employees. The application was gone, of course. There was a single sheet inside her manila folder. It was typed very neatly. I resign. Sincerely yours, Mabel. The name had been typed too. There was no handwritten signature. Mabel had never written anything. She always insisted that everything be typed. Art stared at me. Do you remember anything on the application? Anything? The references? He was pleading. For Pete's sake, Art, it was 6 months ago. I paused for a moment. I can remember one thing. Just one. What? She came from Cricket Creek. I wonder if there is a Cricket Creek. We checked. There wasn't. I finally got home to my 2-floor apartment late that evening. The police had been sympathetic, real nice to us. They didn't even laugh when we told them they were after a little old lady of 65. They asked for a photograph or a sample of handwriting. We, of course, didn't have either. I opened a can of beer and then walked into one of the bedrooms. Mabel was sitting on the bed, neatly counting out the $78,000 into 2 separate piles. I looked at her, smiled, and said, "Hi, Mom." And that is the end of our story about the little old lady from Cricket Creek. Next week, the story, as I said, will be longer. And hopefully it might be our last one because things are getting much nicer outside. We're going to be tackling one of the classic ancient Greek myths. I hope you'll come, but in the meantime, stay home, stay well, stay safe, and take care of each other. Good night.